Hi, so we're going to have a look at the updates for the Demon Hunter. Now, what has mostly happened with the talents is they've been changed around in the trees. Some of them have changed slightly as well. The first tier is largely unchanged. There isn't really anything different there. The second one, this was in a different place, so this is your sort of cleave. Fell Eruption, we've now got more details on it. It didn't really say what it did before, but we can now see this is like a single target ability that will stun, do a certain amount of physical damage and stun for a certain period of time. Then down here now, these I took together, First Blood and Fellblade. Well, they're now on the same tier, so we have to have a choice. So Fellblade, of course, is the one with the little charge, very short duration, very short range, sorry. First Blood, where the extra damage on the first target, which again means it's also suitable for single target, because if we look here, strikes all nearby enemies for 68k, well 1000 on that is like 680. So that's a fairly big boost. Bloodlet, now this is the first one that has changed in concept, and I want to try this out. Throw Glaive causes targets to bleed for 400% of the damage inflicted. It used to be 190% over 10 seconds. So, okay, has it been made more powerful? And I was looking at it, say, is it just the target, as in the thing you've actually got targeted? Because Throw Glaive, of course, affects up to 4 additional enemies. So I want to check, does this mean that the bleed is applied to all targets that it hits, in which case it is very definitely a buff, or have they said we're just going to have it bleed the main target? So what I need to do is to persuade a couple of things to come together so that I can try it on them. Let's get them together. Right, so the bleed is on that, and it's on that as well. So it is affecting all targets. Let's just finish these off now. There's the stun on that one. Quite a bit of physical damage from the Fell Eruption there. So that ability has been straight up buffed. So what we're just going to have a quick look at is, because when we're looking at talents, it sort of depends, I suppose, exactly what you're doing. But generally, I think in terms of raiding, and I think, well, single target or AoE. Sometimes there might be some utility that makes the decision for you. So now in here we're thinking, okay, well, this is good for single target. It doesn't add anything for AoE. It just makes that ability useful for single target. This is like the AoE choice. So this is just a choice, I suppose, where there's a lot of movement involved in a fight now. Because although I discussed in the last video how we can use this for for our soloing, our leveling. So if I just move it there and I get rid of this, so get rid of that. So there's a little bit of synergy between these two. What I said is one thing you can use this, the charge for, is do that, away, and then charge in. Remember, your Demon's Bite has a chance to reset the cooldown as well on it. So that's just how I was suggesting use it before. But thinking for group PvE, again, there's a little bit of that as well, especially if you use it with Momentum, where Fell Rush and Ventral Retreat increase your damage done by 20% for 4 seconds, though. I mean, that's... it used to be 15 seconds... sorry, 15% for 6 seconds. It's now been changed to 20%, so a bit of a buff, but for 4 seconds. It's now... You can't realistically keep this up. So... Momentum for me, but let's go through in order. So Prepared is what Prepared was. Chaos Cleave used to be somewhere else, but again, it's the same sort of thing. It gives your Chaos Strike, which is your main Fury user, or the one you use most of the time, I should say, not necessarily the most damaging. It gives it a Cleave effect. Fell Eruption, I've just showed you there. Physical damage, it's got a 20 yard range, sorry, 25 second cooldown, causes 220 Fury. And it does a short stun, very short stun, so it's realistically like you could use it to interrupt something. Fellblade does what Fellblade has done before. It generates Fury, remember, rather than costs it, so it's quite useful for that point of view. And the cooldown is affected by your haste. First Blood is what First Blood did before. It's just that we now have to choose between these two. And Bloodlet has been buffed from what it was before. So in an AoE situation, it really looks like you want to be using this. I mean, this tier is now the most straightforward in a way, not for your choices. I would say Bloodlet for AoE, First Blood for single target. But if you're going to do a lot of moving, or if you're going to use Vengeful Retreat for whatever reason a lot, then Fellblade. Down here, we've got the same sort of things as before. It's our defensives. So this means that our Blur makes it an invulnerability, but we can't attack. 1.5 minute cooldown though, so I mean that's quite tasty. When I compare it to Divine Shield for my Paladin, where I can attack in it, but it's got a 5 minute cooldown. This 1.5 minute cooldown. Not too bad in group PvE that you can use the time just for being healed up. It's a bit stunning that. This is more your soloing stuff. Blur will automatically trigger if you get into trouble, but it can only do it every 30 seconds, but that's twice as often as you can manually trigger it for. And Soul Rending, 100% leech while Metamorphosis is active. I've already said I don't like this at all because Metamorphosis is your main offensive cooldown. You do not want to be using it defensively. And giving yourself leech is purely defensive. I mean, when you're using Metamorphosis, you might not need healing. And when you do need healing, you're not going to use your main offensive cooldown, surely. That would be just mad. So this makes no sense. Momentum, as I've already said, you can't realistically keep it up now. You'd be jumping all over the place using Vengeful Retreat and using your Fell Rush whenever you can. And for 4 seconds, well, you're losing time being out of your melee range anyway, just on it. So I'm not sure I see the point of this now. Maybe they thought it was too powerful with 6 seconds, but don't see it. Demonic. This is the one that I think was a coming soon before. It didn't tell us what it was. So this is I-Beam and Chaos Nova. Chaos Nova, remember, is your AoE stun effect. It does damage as well. Have a chance to transform you into full Metamorphosis for 5 seconds. If you're already transformed, the duration is extended. Might be quite useful. There's only so much you can do in that time. You've got to bear in mind, like, if I-Beam triggers it, I-Beam itself is channeled over a certain amount of time. And if you take Blind Fury, where the duration is extended by 50%, I mean, it can last several... You might get this triggering, and you're out of Metamorphosis before you've had a chance really to do anything. Just to remind us what Metamorphosis is. Okay, we can use it to do a bit of a charge. I mean, that's not the effect it's talking about. And it empowers your Demon's Bite and Chaos Strike abilities, it says. Now, in actual fact, in the last build, that wasn't what it did at all. I'll show you what it did. It's done the same here. It's not empowered Demon's Bite. It's empowered Chaos Strike, but also Blade Dance into different things. So that is what is actually empowered. So the tooltip looks like it's still a bit wrong there. But as I say, so it's not that it increases your damage directly. It's not like another offensive cooldown where, okay, your damage is increased by so much percent. So if you're stuck in I-Beam while this thing procs, what good is it? It's doing you no favours at all. So that to me seems odd. As for Chaos Nova, again, I mean, you don't use Chaos Nova in your normal DPS rotation. It's not worth it. You use it as an AoE stun. So I don't see the purpose of this. Again, it's another talent that makes, to me, no sense at all. If you think you see a better use for it that I haven't seen, by all means, by all means, put it in the comments below. Nemesis is the one I'm favouring, especially for boss fights. Gives you a 10% damage increase for 2 minutes. It's got a 2 minute cooldown, so it's up all the time, like if you put it on a boss. The only thing is, for like putting it in dungeons, you're a little bit concerned because if the target dies, you still keep the damage increase, but for against any target of the same type. Well, that's sort of fine if all the targets are the same type. If you're killing humanoids, that humanoid dies. So any humanoid you kill for the rest of the duration, you get a 10% damage increase. But if it's other types of mob like beasts or dragonkin or demons or something like that, not so much. So in an area where everything is the same mob type, absolutely brilliant. On a boss, absolutely brilliant. So this is my favourite one now, really. You could say for solo leveling when you get up that far. momentum, because you could fail rush into a mob. You got your 4-second DPS, blah blah blah. Maybe you kill it really quickly, and then that's that one. On to the next one. Again, some ones that have moved about a bit. Master of the Glaive now has 2 charges, and what this does now is it snares all enemies hit by 50% for 4 seconds. So your throw glaive now causes snare effect, so fairly useful potentially. PvP, I suppose this is a good one. Will have some use in PvE as well. Unleashed Power, we've had this one before. This is the one I quite like. Removes the fury cost of Chaos Nova and reduces its cooldown by 33%, because the problem with an AoE stun is it needs to be used to order, especially if you're in a stun rotation on a raid boss. You don't want to be having to hold up fury, and then what if you forget as well? Your fury, it's not good having a fury cost on something like this. Reduces its cooldown as well, which is really good. So it changes it to a 40-second cooldown. Demon's Blades, because they've moved this way down. It used to be all the way up here. Now it's all the way down here. I can't try it to see if they've improved it, but my criticisms from before still stand. In terms of the last couple of builds, it wasn't generating enough fury to be worth it. So straight off, there's a numbers problem. That may have been fixed. I don't know. Can't really test it out unless I go into a dungeon and get scaled up, or until I get to level 108. But even if the amount of fury it generates is all right, I'd still say it was not good for 2 reasons. One is because you don't feel in control. It's nice to have Demon's Bite because it gives you some control over your fury generation. You feel like you're doing something. The other problem is it's taking up a talent slot, and this is not a crap tier here. These 2 talents are really good. They're really good. So don't see it for Demon Blades. I'm not saying I'm going to predict this, but if I was a developer, I would be putting serious thoughts into just getting rid of it and changing it for a different talent altogether. The only other thing now it does is additional shadow damage on your auto attacks as well. But again, no. You just lose the control of generating your fury. And into the last tier now. So Chaos Blades, this is what Chaos Blades did before. So 2-minute cooldown lasts for 12 seconds. Massively increases the damage of your auto attacks. So the better haste you have, I suppose. And grants mastery damage to all your attacks. So this is like an extra amount of damage. Does it chaos damage? Let me just double check. Yeah, increases your chaos damage and your movement speed, but that doesn't apply to this. And certain abilities benefit from your mastery, because certain abilities generate chaos damage and certain ones don't. This means that all of them will for those 12 seconds. Fell Barrage, I showed you this before in the dungeon gameplay video. I didn't really get my head around it too well, but there is now a damage and attacks have a chance to generate a charge now, so you could get more use out of it. It's one that I'd like to test personally with it out in the field like this, rather than in a dungeon where you've got a certain duty not to piss about too much with the other group. But until we can get to 110, that's not possible. At the moment, I'm only level 105 here, and the game at the moment in Alpha doesn't allow you to go beyond 108 anyway. And then finally, Demon Reborn. All your cooldowns are reset when you invoke Metamorphosis. It's a decent one. I've said this before. It's a good one because when you pop Metamorphosis, you don't really want your cooldowns active. That being said, given that Metamorphosis mostly only buffs these sort of abilities, and Chaos Strike doesn't have a cooldown, it's just purely have you got the Fury for it. Blade Dance does, but it's only 10 seconds. And the rest of them it doesn't matter because Metamorphosis does not buff your other damage abilities. So out of this one, you would probably be talking either Chaos Blades or Fell Barrage. Fell Barrage sounds like it's decent, especially in AoE situation. You just sort of, I just want to test it out properly, really. So that's sort of the talent overview. In terms of other things, the only main criticism I have, because the abilities, I've said this before, even in the last build, made a lot more sense. The spec plays a lot better. But what I would say is on the subject of our interrupt. Now the problem with the interrupt is it fills up your chaos bar, fury bar, sorry. which sounds really good. So that sounds like you'd really want to be on interrupting duty, much like the warrior in live because of the glyph there. But the problem is it has a 20-second cooldown. Melee generally have a 15-second cooldown. So if you think back to some of the fights we've had in Draenor, and of course those aren't the fights we're going to be having, but the time between interruptible casts has been such that you wouldn't really want to put into the interrupt rotation someone with a 20-second cooldown. Even though, as a DPS game, a Demon Hunter would want to be in that rotation. So I suppose you could leave them out and then just say to them, we'll just interrupt whenever it's up. But then someone else might snipe it off you accidentally, you know. So I really do think that they should bring it in line and make it a 15-second cooldown along with other melee. So that's the update from the latest alpha build. I'm going to do a dungeon a bit later and I'll upload that with my findings. If that's done at the time you're watching this, then by the power of YouTube there will be a link to that here as well. And in the meantime, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. If you don't like, then please comment why. All feedback very gratefully received. Until next time, I'll see you later.